Welcome back to another explainer. Today, we are unpacking a totally gripping narrative pulled straight from some truly fascinating source material. We're talking about a high-stakes industrial breakdown colliding with this incredibly emotional underdog triumph. Imagine millions of dollars on the line, the brightest engineering minds completely stumped, and the ultimate fix coming from, well, literally the most unlikely place imaginable. It's an unbelievable story about human intuition, dark corporate mysteries, and destiny. So let's decode the 100-core machine mystery and the boy who listened.
Okay, let's dive into this. It sounds exactly like the setup to a Hollywood movie, right? How in the world does a 14-year-old kid, whose actual day job is shining shoes out on the dusty streets, manage to fix a 100-crore or multi-million-dollar piece of advanced technology, especially when it has completely baffled the nation's absolute best engineers? Well, to figure this out, we have to transport ourselves to the Genix Automation Factory. According to the source material, this isn't just your run-of-the-mill factory. It's an absolute fortress of steel where the world's most advanced robotics and AI machines are built. But on this one particular day, there's no hum of machinery. There is only this ghostly, terrifying silence.
Because the literal heart of the factory, a massive iron giant known as the Titan X, is completely dead. We're dropped right into the middle of an absolute corporate nightmare here. Every single second that this colossal machine sits idle, literally millions of dollars are vanishing into thin air. Poof, gone. And at the center of all this chaos is Aryan Chaudhuri, this powerhouse tech mogul. But right now, he is a man pushed to the absolute edge. The sources describe him with bloodshot eyes, messy hair, literally slamming his hands on the meeting room table, just screaming at his panicked team of top-tier engineers. He's furious, demanding to know why he pays them these exorbitant salaries if they can't even get this machine to turn on. And the reason for his sheer panic is totally justified. 10 agonizing days. For 10 whole days, the Titan X has remained totally paralyzed. These elite engineers have tried absolutely everything. They swapped out sensors, they ran countless software reboots, they painstakingly checked every inch of the motherboard. They even flew in these incredibly expensive foreign experts who sweat over the machine, scratching their heads, and nothing. Nothing worked. The giant iron beast wouldn't even flinch. It was honestly as if some invisible force was just holding it hostage.
Now, notice the stark contrast here. On one side, you have these top engineers. They're armed with fancy degrees, incredibly expensive scanners, state-of-the-art diagnostics, the works. Yet, they are totally helpless. And on the other side, enter Neil, a 14-year-old boy sitting right outside the factory gates in a dusty old shirt with a burlap sack slung over his shoulder polishing shoes. But Neil wasn't just staring blankly at the factory. He was looking intently through the massive glass windows, almost like his eyes were piercing the walls to see that dead machine inside. When the desperate CEO, Aryan, happens to walk past him, Neil boldly speaks up. And he doesn't offer a guess, okay? He states a fact. He tells the CEO that the machine didn't just break down. It was intentionally shut off. Naturally, the highly paid engineers just laugh, right? They're mocking a shoeshine boy holding a basic screwdriver. But Neil just calmly replies that their expensive scanners, well, they were looking in the absolute wrong place.
Section 2. The Unlikely Genius. A degree from the streets.
To really understand Neil, we have to leave that shiny, sterile factory and visit the broken-down slum garage where he actually lives with his grandfather, a veteran mechanic. You see, Neil lost his mother, and he never even knew his father. So he was raised right there in the grease and grime of this garage, which brings us to the very core of his education. His grandfather used to tell him, machines aren't just iron, they speak too. He didn't teach the boy from dry textbooks. Instead, in the dead of night, he taught Neil how to literally feel the pulse of an engine. Neil's childhood toys weren't action figures. They were scrap metal, old generators, and greasy nuts and bolts. His grandfather taught him that if you just listen closely enough, a machine will tell you exactly where it's hurting. So Neil's true education? It was this incredibly deep intuition with machinery. He didn't need a formal degree because he could feel a machine's soul.
Section 3. The Investigation. 5 minutes to save an empire.
So back at the factory, the whole system is on the verge of a total crash. Aryan Chaudhuri is out of options, so he takes this massive gamble and actually brings the dusty street kid into his pristine, high-tech lab. He gives Neil exactly 5 minutes to prove his wild theory. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is Neil's completely unconventional process. First, he totally ignores all the glowing digital screens and state-of-the-art diagnostic tools that the engineers were so obsessed with. Second, he literally presses his ear against the cold iron body of the machine, listening for its pulse, exactly like his grandfather taught him. And third, guided by pure intuition, he walks around the massive structure and pinpoints one very specific hidden panel near the main control unit.
And while the engineers are still snickering in the background, Neil simply turns and asks for a screwdriver. He pops open that hidden panel and, wow, he uncovers blatant internal sabotage. Someone had deliberately, and with extreme precision, swapped the positive and negative wires deep within the main control unit. This was totally invisible to the software scanners. Neil explains to the room that this wasn't some random glitch, it was a deadly, intentional trap. The very moment the machine would have successfully started up, those swapped wires would have triggered a catastrophic internal explosion. It would have completely destroyed the multi-million-dollar project and maybe even the lab. The machine wasn't sick, it had been fed poison.
Immediately, the security team rushes in to secure the room, and Neil's fingers just fly to work. In mere minutes, he corrects the intricate wiring. He stands up, looks the CEO dead in the eye, and tells him to push the button. I mean, you can practically feel the tension in the room at this point. Aryan Chowdhury, with a literally trembling hand, reaches out and presses the green startup button. 1 second passes, 2 seconds, 5 seconds, and then this massive roaring sound just shakes the factory floor. The Titan X powers up perfectly to its full magnificent strength. The digital screens that were totally dead for 10 days suddenly flash brilliant green with 2 words, "System healthy." The top engineers hang their heads in absolute shame, and the company is miraculously saved from ruin.
Section 4. The shocking reveal. The price of a fix.
So the technical mystery is solved, but this is where the story takes a massive pivot. Aryan approaches the boy who literally just saved his entire empire. He's got tears in his eyes, and he asks Neil to just name his price. Anything. But Neil doesn't ask for millions. He simply asks for medical funds for his ailing mother. And then he reaches deep into his burlap sack and pulls out a 15-year-old faded black and white photograph. He tells Aryan that right before his mother passed, she told him his father lived in this very city and his name was Aryan. He hands the fragile photo over. Aryan looks at it and it's like he's been struck by lightning. The photograph features a much younger Aryan, standing happily next to his wife, Anuradha.
And this brilliantly illustrates the tragic yet deeply fateful timeline that brought us here. 15 years ago, due to a terrible misunderstanding, Aryan kicked his pregnant wife, Anuradha, out of his house. He had absolutely no idea he had a son. Years go by, and that son, Neil, grows up in crushing poverty, learning the language of machines in a dusty slum garage. And finally, present day, destiny brings them back together. The powerful, desperate CEO and the street kid mechanic reunite over a broken iron giant. The man who owned the factory drops to his knees right there in front of the shoeshine boy, weeping, begging his unknown son for forgiveness. But wait, we still have one major loose end, don't we? Who poisoned the machine? Well, an investigation is immediately launched, and the final twist of the mystery comes to light. The true traitor wasn't some rival tech company or a mechanical glitch. It was actually Aryan's own younger brother. Driven entirely by greed, the brother had meticulously set that explosive wire trap with the sole intention of bankrupting GenX Automation so he could sweep in and seize power. Following this massive revelation, the brother is promptly handed over to the police and sent straight to jail.
Section 5. The Ultimate Triumph. Building the Future. After all the dust settles, Aryan gives Neil the position he truly deserves, completely transforming the boy's destiny literally overnight. Neil is no longer the shivering kid sitting outside the gates in a dusty shirt. He is formally recognized as the rightful heir to GenX Automation. But the most incredible part of all this is what Neil does next. He doesn't just move into a fancy mansion and forget where it came from. No, he takes his grandfather's broken-down slum garage and transforms it into the city's absolute largest technical school. He builds a place specifically for thousands of forgotten orphans, giving them the tools and the safe space to learn that deeply intuitive language of machines that his grandfather taught him. He uses his newfound wealth and power to ensure that raw hidden talent out there is never, ever ignored again.
So the crucial point is, what do we actually take away from this? Because this explainer isn't just about a broken machine, right? First off, true talent is absolutely not bound by expensive degrees or prestigious backgrounds. It resides in the human spirit. Second, intuition, deep focus, and truly listening, whether you're listening to a machine or a complex problem in your own life, can solve the seemingly impossible when conventional tools completely fail. And third, sheer willpower and dedication can overcome the most absolute systemic barriers, whether that's crushing poverty or straight-up corporate sabotage.
I want to leave you all with a final thought to mull over today. Do you believe willpower and intuition can overcome any obstacle in your own life? Neil proved that the absolute most powerful tool we possess isn't a fancy piece of software, It's our own focused mind. Thank you so much for hanging out with me to unpack this incredible source material today. Keep learning, keep pushing your own boundaries, and I will catch you in the next explainer.